Hello, my name is Nusha Jimday, and for my Philosophy 114 final project, I will be talking about the racial disparities and impact it played on COVID-19 deaths. Racial disparities is defined by Cliff Notes in legal terms. It refers to a difference that may or may not be related to discrimination. They mention that one type of racial disparity occurs when there is significant difference between the percentage of a racial group represented in the general population and the percentage of the same group represented at any time in the justice process. For example, African Americans make up about 12% of the U.S. population but account for about 40% of all arrests, 50% of the prison population, and 50% of inmates on death row. And from the NCHS and the CDC, um, one of their core important factors is improving the health and racial and ethnic minorities in the United States. It's a public health priority. But there are certain disparities that make it very difficult for certain ethnicities or races to get the same health care that other races, such as white people, get. There's a wide range of health indicators, including life expectancy, infant mortality, and a variety of risk factors. And this is before COVID. This is just general within the United States. So who is most impacted by COVID-19? We'll start with the United States, and then we'll move on to more worldwide. This is a graph from the CDC. It's a COVID-19 weekly cases per 1,000 population by race and ethnicity. As you can see here, the highest peak of cases is the yellow and the dark green lines. And the yellow line is the Asian, Indian, and Native Americans within the United States. And the green line is the Hispanic population in the United States. And they spike very much so compared to the next highest, which is white people. And it peaked around January 2021. And this is in comparison the weekly deaths. Again, the highest is the Asian American and Native American, followed by Hispanic, and then third place is the white race. In comparison, when you look at the race and ethnicity of people with at least one dose of the COVID vaccine administered, and then people who are fully vaccinated, white non-Hispanic people are the most vaccinated compared to the American Indian or Alaskan Native American people, who are the least vaccinated, even though, as shown in the previous slide, they have the highest rate of cases and death rates. Who is most impacted worldwide, and what is the vaccine patent? So the vaccine patent is basically saying that companies like Moderna and Pfizer have patents for the vaccine, and so developing countries outside of US or the Western world have to pay a lot of money to get the specific vaccines. So in this article from magazine, PM urged to waive vaccine patents, and the UK Prime Minister, he is urged to suspend intellectual property rules on COVID-19 vaccines. It mentions who is signing these letters and who wants it waived. Waiving patents would speed up global vaccine production, allowing quicker and more effective distribution in low-income countries. But a lot of other countries like UK and Germany have resisted the proposal. And the aid agency Oxfam said that suspending patents would reduce the cost of vaccinating lower and middle income countries from 80 billion to 6.5 billion. So it would be a lot cheaper for lower income countries to vaccinate their citizens. This is from an article about a woman named Nzoe, who faces first test in fight over generic corona drug patent. She is the first African woman to lead the World Trade Organization. And her first test of leadership as leaders of poor and rich nations spar over the rights to the generic versions of COVID-19 vaccine currently held by the Western nations. Developing countries such as South Africa and India are demanding a waiver of patent rights in order to boost production of COVID-19 vaccines for poor nations, but they are being blocked by richer members of the World Trade Group. And Western countries have large domestic pharmaceutical industries, so what's being implied here is that they don't want generic vaccines because they just want to make money. In the same article, it's mentioned that Western nations are vaccinating at a rate of 1% per second, yet are siding with a handful of pharmaceutical corporations and protecting their monopolies against the needs of the majority of developing countries who are struggling to administer a single dose. It is unforgivable that while people are literally fighting for breath, rich country governments continue to block what could be a vital breakthrough in ending this pandemic for everyone in rich and poor countries alike. Yeah, so Western nations maintain that protecting intellectual property rights encourages research and innovation, and that suspending those rights would not result in a sudden surge of vaccine supply. I think one of the main key points of this is that at this point, about 70% of the United States has been vaccinated, and you can even see here in this chart again that who those majority of the people are even within the United States in comparison of who is at risk so far for COVID-19, and that's also because certain ethnicities or races are more at risk of poverty or illness or unemployment, which is a racial disparity, even just within the United States. And so once you get into developing countries, that's only further obvious that these other countries don't have the same resources that Western countries and the United States might have. So countries such as India that have a wide population and maybe not the same infrastructure as the United States faces more debts, and as a result also comes to the risk of COVID-19 mutating and then causing even more racial disparities. These are my sources for the articles used in this project.